I just need somewhere to vent, because this situation has been eating me alive. It's long, messy, and uncomfortable, but I need to get it out. I'm 27, and my ex-boyfriend, Liam, is 30. We broke up almost exactly 2 years ago, after being together for 4.5 years. And not just anywhere, he broke up with me at my best friend's wedding in Greece. I was the maid of honor. I paid for our flights. We were supposed to be celebrating love, and instead, my relationship quietly died in the middle of it. But to understand how things got this bad, I have to go further back. One of my closest friends is a guy named Andy. He's been like a brother to me for years. When I met him, he had been dating his girlfriend, Ruby, for over a decade. For most of that time, Ruby and I weren't close. Andy always made it seem like she didn't like me, so we stayed separate. That changed toward the end of 2021, when we all started hanging out more. Ruby slowly became part of our wider friend group, and things seemed fine. At least on the surface. Then, in early 2022, something shifted. Liam and Ruby started getting close. Really close. At the time, Andy and I tried to ignore it. We didn't feel like we had the right to be jealous. Andy trusted Ruby. I trusted Liam, or at least I told myself I did. But even so, a rift started forming. Ruby began leaning heavily on Liam for emotional support, and he took her side in everything, while I stood by Andy. Things came to a head when Ruby, who had a history of severe mental health episodes, tried to hurt herself in my house, the house Liam and I shared at the time. She refused Andy's help and only wanted Liam. From that point on, everything felt poisoned. Ruby was constantly at our place. Hours-long phone calls. Endless messages. Nights where she stayed over. I felt like I was losing my partner right in front of me. And the worst part? My relationship with Liam was already fragile. I was deeply insecure, and he had a history of cheating. I forgave him more times than I should have. I stayed because I thought that was what love looked like. Then came the wedding in Greece. The week before the ceremony, we were staying with my best friend and her fiancé, laughing, drinking, pretending everything was okay. One night, both our phones lit up at the same time. Andy had messaged me. Ruby had messaged Liam. They had broken up. After months of chaos, it was finally over between them. Andy was devastated. Ruby leaned even harder on Liam. On the night of the wedding, I heard through the grapevine that Liam had told the groom he wasn't sure he was checked into our relationship anymore. Something in me snapped. I confronted him right there, because I knew if I didn't, my anxiety would ruin the entire night, a night I had spent thousands of dollars to be part of. That's when he told me he wanted to be single to work on himself. And in that moment, strangely, I felt calm. I told him I respected his decision. But I also told him one thing very clearly: if this had anything to do with Ruby being newly single, I would never forgive him. He swore it didn't. We finished the holiday as a couple. When we got home, we agreed to keep living together. Separate bedrooms. Clear boundaries. And a promise: if either of us did anything that made the other uncomfortable, it would stop immediately. That promise lasted 5 days. Because 5 days after we got back, Ruby was sleeping in his bed. I wasn't okay with it. Not even a little. I told Liam that this crossed a line, that it made me deeply uncomfortable. He looked me straight in the eye and told me I was imagining things. That they were just friends. That nothing inappropriate was happening. I believed him. Or at least, I tried to. Within a week, Ruby had been in my house for more than 6 days straight. Sometimes she was there even when neither Liam nor I were home. It stopped feeling like my space. I felt like a guest in my own life. Eventually, I hit my breaking point. I confronted Liam again, and this time it exploded. He stormed out, got into his car, and started sending messages saying he was going to drive off a cliff. I panicked. While I was trying to deal with that, Ruby, who I had bent over backwards to stay civil with, attempted to overdose. I ended up calling both the police and an ambulance. Again. This wasn't the first time. Not the second. Not even the third. Over the course of my relationship with Liam, I had called emergency services multiple times because someone connected to him, including a woman he had cheated on me with, had threatened or attempted to end their life inside my home. By the time everything settled and Liam returned, I was shaking, exhausted, and numb. I went to sleep hoping the nightmare was over. I woke up to Ruby being back in my house. Liam had picked her up after she was discharged and brought her straight back. That was it. I told him, very clearly, that if there was even the slightest chance he was going to get involved with Ruby, he needed to get out of my house immediately. 12 hours later, he moved out. The damage was already done. My mental health completely collapsed. I had been manipulated, gaslit, and made to feel like the villain for daring to set boundaries. The place that was supposed to be my safe space felt hostile and unfamiliar. I barely recognized myself anymore. A couple of months passed. Because we shared a joint account for rent and expenses, I couldn't fully cut contact. I kept communication short, mechanical, purely logistical. Then one day, after an argument about money, including the fact that he still owed me over $1,000 for the wedding trip, he dropped the bomb. Ruby was pregnant. And they were together. I wasn't surprised. Not really. What hurt was something else entirely. Liam and I had never been careful. I always wanted children. And yet, he had never given me one. Seeing them get pregnant almost immediately sent me spiraling. It convinced me that I was the problem. That maybe I was infertile. That maybe this was all somehow my fault. He wanted to stay friends. And against my better judgment, I tried. Life moved on. I kept my distance. Their baby was born. Eventually, I stopped talking to him altogether. Ruby, who had once been my friend, cut me off completely after I kicked Liam out. That was early 2023. I thought the chapter was finally closed. I was wrong. At the start of this year, something made me check my archived WhatsApp chats. I don't know why, instinct, boredom, self-sabotage, who knows. And there it was. A message from Liam, sent weeks earlier. He was moving. Not just nearby. Next door. Same building. Shared wall. Shared entrance stairs. His windows looked directly into my garden. Him. Ruby. Their newborn baby. I felt sick. I understand housing is hard to find. I understand black mold and babies and desperation. I understand all of that logically. Emotionally, it felt like the universe was playing some kind of sick joke on me. Any sense of anonymity, safety, or distance I'd clawed back was gone overnight. They moved in, and I tried to be civil. Really. But Liam wouldn't stop texting. Inviting himself into my life again. Wanting to hang out. To be close. To pretend we were friends. I kept reminding him. I'm your ex. You might be able to separate that, I can't. The real problem started with the noise. I've always been a social person. Even when I was with Liam, my house was a gathering place. A few friends, wine, cards in the garden. Nothing wild. Nothing late-night chaos. But suddenly, every sound became a problem. Texts telling me I was too loud. That I woke the baby. Hints. Comments. Just letting you know we can hear you. Again and again. I started shrinking in my own home. Second-guessing laughing. Talking. Singing in the bathroom. Sitting outside. Walking up the stairs. Existing. I reminded him, you knew exactly who you were moving in next to. I wasn't going to stop living my life because of choices he made. Especially not after everything he'd put me through. But it didn't stop. I felt constantly watched. Constantly overheard. Constantly exposed. The knowledge that my ex knew my movements, my routines, my sounds, it ate away at me. That kind of intimacy should be a choice. Mine wasn't. And the worst part? He didn't get it. Or pretended not to. Then came the comment that finally broke something in me. Another complaint about noise, early evening, not even late, and he casually added that because our bedrooms share a wall, they'd make a conscious effort to quieten their sex noises so I don't hear. That was his attempt at guilt. That was when it clicked. He still had power over me, because I was letting him. I wasn't responsible for his baby. I wasn't responsible for his comfort. And I sure as hell wasn't responsible for managing the emotional consequences of his betrayal. After reading people's reactions and finally seeing the situation clearly, I did something I should have done a long time ago. I sent him one message. I told him how deeply he and Ruby had hurt me. How inappropriate the constant contact was. How invasive it felt living like this. Then I waited until he read it. And I blocked him. Immediately. The relief was instant. Physical. Like I could breathe again for the first time in years. I was angry, not at him, but at myself. For staying small. For being polite when I should have been firm. For confusing civility with self-betrayal. I'm done now. If more drama comes, I'll handle it. But this time on my terms. And for the first time in a long time, I feel free. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. No dramatic confrontation. No explosion next door. No guilt-tripping messages once the block went through. Just silence. And in that silence, I realized how much space he'd been taking up in my head without me even noticing. Every notification, every noise complaint, every forced interaction had kept the wound open. Blocking him didn't erase the past, but it finally stopped the bleeding. I still hear sounds through the wall sometimes. A door. Footsteps. Life happening on the other side. But now it's just noise. Not a trigger. Not a reminder I'm required to emotionally manage. I didn't change who I am. I didn't stop having friends over. I didn't turn my home into a shrine of silence. What changed was this: I stopped explaining myself. The baby is innocent. That's still true. But so am I. Their choices don't get to dictate my existence. Their comfort doesn't come before my healing. I loved deeply. I trusted fully. And I paid for it in ways I wouldn't wish on anyone. But I survived it, and I finally chose myself. If more drama comes, I'll face it clear-eyed and grounded. If it doesn't, even better. Either way, this chapter no longer owns me. And for the first time since that wedding in Greece, my life actually feels like mine again. I don't know what the future looks like yet. Maybe they'll stay next door for years. Maybe they'll move. Maybe something else entirely will happen. But for the first time, my peace doesn't depend on that. I stopped trying to be the bigger person at my own expense. Stopped softening my pain so others wouldn't feel uncomfortable. Stopped acting like betrayal loses its impact just because time passes. I loved someone who never loved me back the way I deserved. I was replaced, lied to, emotionally cornered, and then asked to be quiet about it, literally and figuratively. Not anymore. My home is loud again. My laughter is mine again. My life is no longer lived around the choices of someone who chose me last. This isn't revenge. This isn't bitterness. It's boundaries. And I wish I'd learned sooner that protecting your peace isn't cruelty. It's survival. There's a strange grief that comes after you finally stand up for yourself. Not the loud, sobbing kind. The quiet one. The kind where you realize how long you abandoned yourself just to keep the peace. When I blocked him, I expected relief, and I got it. But I also felt the weight of everything I'd tolerated. The gaslighting, the emotional whiplash, the audacity of being asked to make myself smaller so his new life could be more comfortable. What hit me hardest wasn't that he moved on. It was that he tried to keep me emotionally available while doing it. An ex, a neighbor, a backup comfort person. All roles I never agreed to. Now the silence is different. It's not tense. It's not heavy. It's clean. I still hear noises through the walls sometimes. Footsteps. Doors. Life happening next door. But it no longer feels like my responsibility. I didn't lose him. I lost the version of myself that thought love meant enduring pain quietly. And honestly, that's a loss I can live with. These days, my house finally feels like mine again. The garden. The stairs. The quiet mornings and the loud laughter with friends. I don't flinch when I hear my phone buzz anymore. No anxiety spike. No wondering if I've done something wrong just by existing. Blocking him didn't change the fact that he lives next door. But it changed something far more important. Access. He no longer gets my thoughts. My guilt. My emotional labor. If the baby cries, it's not my fault. If the walls are thin, it's not my problem to fix. If they regret where they moved, that's a choice they made without considering me, just like before. I still try to be respectful. Not because they deserve it, but because I deserve peace. And I refuse to let bitterness turn me into someone I don't recognize. Sometimes I catch myself laughing in the kitchen late at night. Sometimes I sing in the bathroom again. Loudly. Off-key. Unapologetic. And in those moments, I realize something. This wasn't just about an ex. Or a baby. Or a wall we share. It was about reclaiming my life from people who were perfectly comfortable taking from me as long as I stayed quiet. I'm not quiet anymore. And for the first time in a long time, I feel at home. I don't know what the future looks like with them living next door. Maybe they'll stay for years. Maybe they'll move on. Maybe one day I'll move instead. But for the first time, the uncertainty doesn't scare me. Because I finally understand something I didn't back then. Closure doesn't come from apologies. Or accountability. Or people suddenly realizing how badly they hurt you. Closure comes from deciding that you're done paying the emotional rent on a life that isn't yours anymore. I didn't get the family I thought I would have. I didn't get the honesty I deserved. And I didn't get the ending I imagined. What I got instead was my voice back. My space back. My peace back. And even if every laugh, every song, every gathering still echoes through that shared wall, at least now, it belongs to me. Sometimes I think about the girl I was when all of this started. The one who thought love meant patience without limits. The one who believed being understanding would eventually be rewarded. The one who kept making herself smaller so other people wouldn't feel uncomfortable. I don't recognize her anymore. Now, when I sit in my garden with a glass of wine and friends around me, I don't lower my voice out of fear. I don't check the time every 5 minutes. I don't feel guilty for living a full, loud, imperfect life. What happened to me hurt deeply. And I won't pretend it didn't leave scars. But it also taught me something invaluable. Anyone can say they love you. Anyone can promise friendship. But the people who truly care about you don't put you in positions where you have to constantly betray yourself just to keep them comfortable. I didn't ruin his life. I didn't owe his new family silence. And I didn't need to disappear to make space for them. I stayed. I chose myself. And I finally stopped apologizing for existing. This house isn't just where I live now. It's where I learned that peace is louder than guilt. And far more powerful than anything I ever lost. If there's one thing this whole experience burned into me, it's this. You don't owe anyone access to you just because you shared a past. Not your time. Not your silence. Not your emotional energy. Living next door to my ex didn't break me. Staying emotionally available to him almost did. What finally saved me wasn't a confrontation, or an apology, or some dramatic moment of justice. It was a quiet decision, made alone, to stop explaining myself to people who had already decided I didn't matter. I still live my life the same way I always wanted to. Friends over. Laughter in the garden. Music drifting through open windows. The difference is, now I don't flinch. If the walls are thin, so be it. If life is audible, that's just proof I'm living it. And whatever story they tell themselves on the other side of that wall, it no longer has anything to do with me. For the first time since all of this began, I'm not surviving anymore. I'm home.